vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Saib.
And my name is Him Korsura, and on the show today, South Africa's ruling ANC, African National Congress, its lost majority for the first time in nearly 30 years. With nearly all ballots counted, the ANC has received just about 40% of the votes. They will now seek a coalition government. Where do things stand right now? How will things pan out going forward? That is something we'll discuss on the show today.
Right, Abe. And in West Asia, the back and forth over a peace deal proposed by US President Joe Biden, that continues, with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu facing pressure from hardliners within his government who have threatened to quit if the deal goes through. We will tell you all about that on the show today, but first a quick check on the headlines.
Political parties finalize strategies ahead of counting day on Tuesday. NDA and the India bloc parties hold separate meetings with the Election Commission.
In South Africa, with the ANC well short of a majority, focus shifts to alliance building. ANC says it will not yield to calls for Ramaphosa to step down.
Voting ends, counting underway in national elections in Mexico, the biggest in the country's history. 2 killed in poll violence, with 2 women leading the contest. Mexico will likely elect its first female president.
US says it expects Israel will accept the new ceasefire plan if Hamas accepts the deal. This as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu juggles big differences on the deal within his cabinet.
Several thousand acres of forest in California's San Joaquin Valley reduced to charred wasteland as the wildfire spreads rapidly. Officials say gusty winds, hotter temperatures and dried out grass are fanning the blaze.
Well, anticipation runs high across India in the run-up to counting day on the 4th of June.
All parties are in the process of strategizing around multiple scenarios that could unfold, irrespective of the exit polls announced on Saturday evening. The India bloc delegation, it met with Election Commission on Sunday. Opposition bloc members complained about not counting and declaring the results that came via postal ballots. Congress leader Abhishek Manu Singhvi said the 2019 practice of counting postal ballots has been revoked. The opposition says it's waiting for Election Commission to take action.
The vital importance of counting postal ballots first, of declaring the results of the postal ballots first. This is very clearly stated in the statutory rule. This rule has been misunderstood by the Election Commission, and this has been done away with.
The Bharatiya Janata Party delegation, including Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Union Minister Piyush Goyal, also made their presence felt at the ECI. Goyal criticized what BJP perceived as attempts by INDIA bloc to tarnish the sanctity of India's democratic process.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired 7 meetings on a host of issues on Sunday, including a session to review the 100-day agenda of the new government to be sworn in after the general election results are announced.
The Prime Minister also held a meeting to review the aftermath of the cyclone Remal and another meeting to review the heat wave situation.
A day before the counting of the votes, the Election Commission of India will be holding a press conference. That's today. This is the first time the poll panel will convene a presser on the conclusion of polls. On Sunday, the Election Commission ordered re-polling in 2 booths in West Bengal.
Moreover, ahead of announcement of Lok Sabha results, Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar is in the national capital. According to sources, the Janata Dal United Supremo is likely to meet top BJP leaders during his visit. The 2024 elections have ushered in a paradigm shift in South African politics.
The African National Congress, which has enjoyed a 30-year dominance of South African politics, has lost its long-held absolute parliamentary majority. ANC, which would have needed over 50% of all the votes to form the government on its own, has seen its share catastrophically slip down to barely 40%.
Right. South Africa's Election Commission announced that the official results on Sunday evening, with the focus now shifting to coalition politics and alliance formation.
South Africa's ruling African National Congress has won 159 out of the 400 seats. In the previous election in 2019, the party had won 230 seats. ANC's main challenger, that's the Democratic Alliance, came second with 87 seats. Former President Jacob Zuma's MK party won 58 seats, while the Economic Freedom Fighters came fourth with 39 seats.
The ANC has said that it was open to talk to all parties to form a coalition government following the election. While some experts say that President Cyril Ramaphosa may have to step down. But ANC leaders said on Sunday that the party would not bend to pressure from other political forces.
Thank you very much to all of you. The final announcement of the 2024 national and provincial election results today in many ways represents a victory for our democracy as South Africans. It also represents a victory of our constitutional order, but more importantly, it represents a victory for all the people of South Africa. We have held another successful election that has been free, fair, credible, and peaceful.
For the ANC, a deal with any of the opposition parties, including the DA-MK or EFF, will likely mean significant policy concessions and senior government or parliamentary positions for their partners. The moot question will be whether Cyril Ramaphosa stays president. An election for president in parliament is due within 2 weeks. The ANC was unlikely to pick the wide-based Democratic Alliance as its sole coalition partner, even though its market-friendly stance would sit well with Ramaphosa. An alliance with the DA would be favoured by investors.
The EFF, led by Julius Malema, a former leader of the ANC's youth wing, may be a more natural fit for the ANC, but ties are intense between Malema and some ANC factions.
The EFF said in April that it would partner with the ANC if it got the powerful post of finance minister. The ANC has not disclosed its thinking on any non-majority scenario.
A deal with the MK, which emerged as the third biggest party, would also be difficult, given that the former president, Jacob Zuma, who is now the MK president, has ruled out an alliance with the ANC. The MK has repeatedly said that it would not enter any coalition government if Ramaphosa stays on. Jacob Zuma has also threatened to challenge the electoral results in court, and fears of violence have also arisen.
Now to get the latest from what's happening in South Africa, Carlton Ongmu has sent us this report from Johannesburg. Listen to this.
Now that the results have been declared, a Herculean task for the political parties will resume. Back-to-back negotiations and meetings are expected over the next few days. South Africans are excited for a new dawn. but there is also a lot of anxiety. Will coalition work for South Africans? That's still uncertain. But one thing is for sure, the voice of the masses have been heard. This is Calvin Alva from Johannesburg, South Africa, for WION World is One.
Now, Mexicans went to polls on Sunday. Voting has concluded and counting is now underway.
Right, the country will likely elect its first female president, a milestone in a country which is plagued by criminal and gender-based violence.
Now, nearly 100 million registered voters went to cast their ballots. Many voters residing in the northern Mexican city of Juarez, which lies on the border with the United States, also cast their ballots. The city at the Texas border has dealt with an influx of US-bound migrants.
Fear gripped the small central Mexican town of Quetzalcoatl on Sunday afternoon. According to local prosecutors, a town council contestant was shot dead just hours before voting began. Contestant Israel Delgado was chatting with men near his home when two men on a motorcycle shot him dead. Two more people were killed in violence at a polling station. And according to the state electoral authority, voting was suspended at one polling booth after a person was killed in a shooting in the state of Puebla.
Thousands of troops were deployed to protect voters following a particularly bloody electoral process that has seen more than 24 aspiring local politicians murdered. Voters voiced concerns overwhelmingly about security, from the power of Mexico's drug cartels down to street-level violence.
According to exit polls, the contestant ruling party leftist Claudia Sheinbaum is set to win elections against her major rival Xochitl Galvez, who represents an opposition coalition comprising the Institutional Revolutionary Party, also known as PRI. The PRI has ruled Mexico for 70 years before democratic elections were held in 2000.
A victory by either woman would represent a major step for Mexico. The winner, set to begin a 6-year term on the 1st of October, will face formidable challenges, including addressing organized crime and violence.
Moving on to other global stories, a Chinese defense official has said that the US is now trying to build an Asia-Pacific version of NATO to maintain its hegemony in the region.
Now, the remarks were made at Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. Lieutenant General Jing Jianfeng said that Washington's Indo-Pacific strategy, its creating divisions and confrontations, and its attempt to serve its selfish geopolitical interests are doomed to fail.
He warned that if regional countries were to sign up for the US's Indo-Pacific strategy, they would be enticed into taking bullets for the US.
The US uses the rules and orders as hegemonic narratives. When these rules and orders serve its interests, the US employs them. When they do not, the US discards them. The US uses the rules to suppress others, but never to restrain itself. It's always acted egotistically, doing whatever it wants. From Afghanistan to Iraq, from Ukraine to Gaza, all these crises and conflicts are results of the self-serving double standards of the US.
The Chinese military officer's statements came in response to US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's speech during the dialogue. Austin spoke about strengthening alliances and partnerships across the region.
The Indo-Pacific region comprises the Indian Ocean and the Western and Central Pacific Ocean, including the South China Sea. China claims nearly all of the South China Sea, though Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia and Vietnam claim parts of it. The US and several other nations have been asserting the need to ensure a free Indo-Pacific in the backdrop of China's rising military assertiveness in the resource-rich region.
All right, and North Korea has said that it will stop sending trash-filled balloons over its southern border into South Korea, but it did warn that it will resume if Seoul sends leaflets into the country.
Right, Tim. North Korea launched 700 trash balloons towards its southern neighbor on Sunday. North Korea said its balloons were in retaliation for a propaganda campaign by North Korean defectors and activists in South Korea who regularly send these inflatables containing anti-Pyongyang leaflets.
Now, these North Korean balloons carrying garbage such as cigarette butts, paper waste, excrement were found across the capital Seoul on Sunday. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's office said it would take unendurable measures against North Korea for sending trash balloons over the border.
Seoul affirmed it would point its loudspeakers blaring propaganda towards Pyongyang. South Korean Council condemned the balloons and simultaneous GPS jamming as an irrational act of provocation.
North Korea often responds with fury to South Korean civilian leaflets as it claims that they contain propaganda messages critical of the North's authoritarian rule.
Well, speaking at Asia's biggest security conference in Singapore, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked Washington for allowing Kiev to use its high-mobility artillery rocket system in the Kharkiv region.
However, the Ukrainian president added it is not enough to assist Kyiv on the battleground. Furthermore, Zelensky claimed that Russia is using Chinese influence to disrupt Ukraine's peace motives.
We are thankful, and this is public information. We are thankful to President Biden that they have recently allowed us to use HIMARS in Kharkiv region against bordering territory. Is this enough? No. I've mentioned an example before, the airfields from which Russia bombs Ukraine, knowingly that Ukraine won't bomb them in response. We don't have the systems to do so. Unfortunately, using China's influence in the region, using Chinese diplomats, does everything to disrupt the peace summit. Unfortunately, such a big, independent and powerful country like China is an instrument in the hands of Putin.
Germany is also highlighting Ukraine's urgent need of surface-to-air missile systems. German defense chief says Russia is building its own forces in a time frame and that the most dangerous course would be in the year 2029.
Well, what we see is that Ukraine is or needs air defense, and I would say air defense and air defense, and of course artillery ammunition and weapon systems to fight against Russia in this unprecedented attack Russia has started in 22. I think this situation is pressing for Ukraine, but what we still see there is a stalemate at the front line, and not very much movement in there.
Till now, Washington restricted the use of its weapons to limited military strikes inside Ukraine, including Crimea and occupied territories. Western nations are concerned that attacking targets across the internationally recognized border with weapons provided by NATO countries will escalate the conflict. However, the latest Russian advance in northeastern Kharkiv region convinced Kyiv's allies that in order to defend itself, Ukraine must be able to destroy military targets on the other side of the border as well. All right, after being held guilty on all 34 counts, former US President Donald Trump has said that he is ready to accept a jail term or house arrest.
However, he claims that it can prove to be, and I'm quoting here, breaking point for his supporters, especially ahead of the US presidential elections in the month of November later this year.
That could happen. I don't know that the public would stand it. I'm not sure the public would stand for it. I think it would be tough for the public to take. At a certain point, there's a breaking point.
Now, questions have arisen on whether Trump is warning of violence by his supporters. This comes as Trump is scheduled to be sentenced on the 11th of July.
Well, this means just 4 days before the Republicans will select a presidential nominee to face the Democratic President Joe Biden. While reports suggest that prison time is rare for people convicted of felony or falsifying business records in New York State, the maximum sentence for such a charge is 4 years. Well, there's more trouble for the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. His Tory party now faces accusations of levelling up funds to steer votes.
Now, Level Up, it's a policy pledged in the party's 2019 manifesto under former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to reduce imbalances through investments that aim to level up the communities by improving infrastructure, transport, communication, urban regeneration and more.
Labour says these funds mostly favour the prosperous Tory voting areas and is calling into question the impartiality of these allocations.
The funds were approved mostly for towns won by Tories in 2019. Just 8 were awarded to towns in Labour seats. Overall, England received the most money, followed by Yorkshire and the Humber. Labour MPs posed questions over disparity. Keir Starmer has been calling the excessive funding for Tory-held towns fishy.
Labour is accusing the Tories of pork barrel politics, a term used when lawmakers get funding for the area in return for voters' support. Recently, Sunak promised 30 more towns of approximately $25 million each as levelling up funds over the next decade.
The row is unfolding as the Labour races to its biggest lead in the polls since Liz Truss's premiership. Starmer's party is up 4 points to 45%, while Sunak's Tories are down to 25%. But the more pressing issue, for Tories to deal with now is their campaign getting off to a bad start.
Last weekend, Sunak replaced Shared Prosperity Fund with the EU structural funds for the National Service Scheme for the Young that he plans to enforce if the Conservatives win the elections. Labour slammed the move as last nail in the coffin.
In his defence, Sunak says Tories have established the methodology to allocate billions of dollars to the overlooked areas across the UK since 2019. But Labour believes the trend stems from defeat hysteria.
An MRP poll predicted that Tories are headed for a major wipeout and worst election results with a loss of more than 3/4 of their seats.
All right, as always, time now for a quick break.
But don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, we'll get you a story of the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. The humanitarian crisis takes on ugly proportions. Reports suggest at least 30 children are dead and the shortage is set to derail treatment of over 3,000 children reeling under malnutrition.
Also on the other side, after the exit poll showed a resounding victory for the ruling party, Indian stocks, binds and the rupee are likely to rise. We'll get you the full story on the other side.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injured have been moved. 61 people are confirmed dead and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
South Africa, for WION, World is One.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
The biggest democratic exercise on the planet ever. Decoding the multiple colors of this multi-dimensional, multi-layered spectacle. WION deciphers the images and the hues. Sifts real performance from rhetoric and noise, claims and counterclaims, populist pitches and hidden truths. Untangling, unraveling this celebration of democracy.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Here's a look at what we've lined up for you on this side of the show.
Political parties finalize strategies ahead of counting day on Tuesday. NDA and INDIA bloc parties hold separate meetings with the Election Commission.
In South Africa, with the ANC well short of a majority, focus shifts to alliance building. ANC says it will not yield to calls for Ramaphosa to step aside.
Voting ends, counting underway in national elections in Mexico. The biggest in the country's history, 2 killed in poll violence, with 2 women leading the competition. Mexico will likely elect its first female president.
The United States says it expects Israel to accept the new ceasefire plan if Hamas accepts the deal. This as Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu juggles big differences on the deal within his cabinet.
Several thousand acres of forest in California's San Joaquin Valley reduced to charred wasteland as a wildfire spreads rapidly. Officials say gusty winds, hotter temperatures and dried out grass are fanning the blaze.
Media magnate 93-year-old Rupert Murdoch is married for the 5th time, tying the knot with a 67-year-old Russian-born retired molecular biologist. The couple announced their engagement 3 months ago. Now, tug of war continues in the Israeli cabinet over US President Joe Biden's ceasefire deal.
Right, even this as the US has expressed confidence that Israel would agree to a deal if Hamas gives the nod.
Now, US National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says that US intelligence now believes that Hamas has been militarily degraded to the extent that it can no longer repeat an October 7th-like attack on Israel. But this still does not mean that Hamas does not represent a viable threat to the Israeli people. Kirby said that the United States has every expectation that Israel would say yes to the ceasefire deal. He added that the mediators are waiting for an official response from Hamas.
Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that Israel would not accept Hamas continuing to rule Gaza at any stage. He added that Tel Aviv is working on a different government for Gaza.
At any stage in any process to end the war, we will not accept the rule of Hamas as the authority in Gaza.
Now, Biden's 3-part proposal begins with a 6-week ceasefire that includes troop withdrawal from the populated areas of Gaza. The first phase also includes the exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners and delivery of 600 aid trucks every day. In the second phase, Israel and Hamas could negotiate terms for a permanent end to hostilities. And the final phase involves a major reconstruction plan for Gaza with international support.
Netanyahu insists that his conditions for ending the war, that majorly includes total destruction of Hamas, have not changed, and that the deal is a non-starter until Hamas is completely dismantled.
The families of the hostages rallied outside Prime Minister Netanyahu's office calling for implementation of the deal.
Thousands attended a parade in the New York City calling for immediate release of hostages held in Gaza.
Far-right Israeli ministers are threatening to bring down Netanyahu's governing coalition if the deal is accepted. Last week, Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz's centrist party warned that it will dissolve the Knesset. According to a new poll, if elections were held today in Israel, Gantz's National Unity Party would win 27 seats and will take the majority in the Knesset. Netanyahu's Likud party will be left with just 21 Knesset members ahead instead of the current 32. While the Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid's party, Yesh Atid, would win 14 seats and become the country's 3rd largest party.
Netanyahu has been struggling to avoid coalition implosion over Gaza's ceasefire plan. Hardliners Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir threatened to pull the government down if the deal was accepted. Gvir said that truce would be a victory for terror and a security danger to Israel. Smotrich opposed the return of displaced Gazans to Gaza's north, and he said, and I'm quoting him here, wholesale release of terrorists.
On the other hand, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid said that he will back Netanyahu if his far-right coalition partners quit. Meanwhile, on the ground, fighting between Hamas and the IDF continues to rage on.
Israeli army tanks were seen moving along the border. The military struck 30 terror targets over the past day, including Hamas's weapon storage facilities.
At least 5 people, including a young girl, were killed in an Israeli airstrike on central Gaza. Their bodies were brought to the morgue at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Bala. Over 36,430 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israeli ground offensive. UN Palestine Aid Agency says that in Rafah, all 36 shelters are empty as people were forced to flee due to Israel's continuing military operations. Now for more on this, we're being joined by Adrian Kalmel, who is a fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute. He is also a scholar in matters of terrorism in West Asia and is joining us live from New York. So thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, I want to begin by asking you, the divisions within the Israeli government are all too evident. Netanyahu faces pressure from hardliners within his cabinet, of course. What is your assessment on the deal being put forth? Would you say it's already at a stalemate?
I would say it's at a stalemate. This, as Netanyahu said, this deal is a non-starter. I look at it as this is the American administration putting tremendous political pressure, both from a world perspective and internally. There has been no secret that there is not a whole lot of love between the Netanyahu government and the Biden administration, and that dates back to when he was a vice president. Biden put forward a 3-part plan. There's a 4th part missing, and that is the dismantling, removal of Hamas. And they need to be defeated. Israel cannot agree to this because what the Biden administration is doing, and you mentioned it in the Kirby's statements leading into the segment, that he believes that they've been degraded enough, that they've had enough of their capacity diminished, that they cannot reconstitute themselves to fight another day. And this just simply is false. We learned this. This is the same language we heard about Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, that they've been degraded, defeated, on the road to defeat, but they're stronger than they ever have been. And Hamas, if you look at them, they also have state sponsorship from both Qatar and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Their top leadership is sheltered in other countries, so they can reconstitute themselves.
Right, Mr. Kalmel, speak of how this is clearly political pressure from America, and Biden unveiled the 3-point peace plan. It is also an election year in the United States of America. If this deal does not go through, what sort of implications do you think it will have for U.S. President Joe Biden?
That's a great question, and it's really difficult for me to tell. I think he's playing with fire when you're putting regional security and national security, when you look at the scenes that are playing out in streets across the United States. When you're putting your own political objectives and your own re-election campaign, and really it focuses on one state, it's Michigan. To do that, and dismiss all of the complications. It's rather despicable, I must say. And I'll go back. I want to make one more point on the casualty numbers here. United States put this pressure on the Biden administration. I mean, on the Bibi government, the Israeli government. The demand was, we keep on hearing numbers of 30,000, 40,000. They're coming from the Hamas Ministry of Health. What we're not focusing on is the inordinate effort that the IDF has taken to minimize casualties. We're talking about one civilian to one Hamas fighter to 1.4 civilians. Now, to compare this, I'll just give you one battle, the battle for Mosul, the last battle to take ISIS. You had 600 ISIS fighters going up against roughly, and you had a trapped civilian population of 60,000 people. And what did they do? They leveled the city. So that was a 60-to-1 death ratio. One terrorist to 60 civilians. So there is a double standard that is being applied here. And putting political pressure on Israel is not the way to go about this. It's not the way to bring comity to the Middle East.
Sir, but that being said, you did touch on this earlier as well, as you mentioned, of course. Israel too is adamant that it wants the complete destruction of Hamas. At a time when there is, of course, growing anger and uproar, of course, regarding the hostages to be brought back, the rising humanitarian death toll, and the famine-like situation that Gaza faces right now. To what end do you think Israel can justify its ground operations?
Well, I think they have to justify the ground operations on a couple of things. Number one, it's always been about getting the hostages back. Hamas could have stopped this from day one by just releasing the hostages. They've refused to. They've rejected every single deal. Now the question is, are any of the hostages that are remaining, are they even still alive? They've been held for over 232 days now, many of them with no aid to healthcare, severe injuries. We're finding dead bodies inside of tunnels where they were hidden inside Rafah. So I think part of the problem is the political will. If you look at the United States, you look at the countries or Egypt next door, everybody's a little concerned what they might find in Rafah as far as hostages, rat lines, moving Hamas fighters out of Rafah. So that goes back to the reconstituting of Hamas, that they can't fight again. And my argument is that this is, you don't understand terrorism if you think that Hamas is destroyed here or that they can't easily reconstitute themselves.
Right, so I guess that is the battle right now, that Hamas ideology still remains very much intact, and it is the humanitarian situation that is getting increasingly dire. That being said, Mr. Calmel, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your insights on this.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a nice day.
Now, amid the unending onslaught by Israel in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis that has taken an ugly turn.
Skeletal aid entering Gaza that has been further reduced because of the closing of the Rafah crossing. At least 30 children are dead, and the shortage is set to derail treatment of over 3,000 children reeling under acute malnutrition.
Now, with the Rafah-Egypt crossing under control of Israeli forces, fighting has choked flow of supplies through the Kerem Shalom Pass. The United Nations has warned that since Israel launched its ground offensive in Rafah, the overall aid supply have dropped by 2/3.
Now, this comes as the U.S. installed aid pier has been damaged by high seas and harsh weather. As per officials, the repair can take up to another week. Meanwhile, international think tanks, including Oxfam, MSF, and Save the Children fear, and I'm quoting here, an acceleration in deaths over starvation, disease, and denied medical assistance.
Save the Children has revealed that due to the closing of crossings, they are unable to carry medical evacuations of children who need urgent treatment outside Gaza. The World Health Organization reflects that 85% of children younger than 5 years of age do not eat for 1 in every 3 days.
US, Israeli and Egyptian officials met on Sunday to discuss the reopening of the Rafah crossing. During the meet, Egypt stayed put on Israeli withdrawal from Gaza's territories and especially Rafah. However, an agreement over the discussion is still awaited.
Following the meeting, Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said that Egypt will support every effort to end the Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip.
With a near total collapse of medical facilities and infrastructure, sewage water has now started to flood the makeshift homes and tents of displaced Gazans. The incident has skyrocketed health concerns in the Strip. Additionally, as per Gaza's health ministry, at least 36,379 people have been killed since the fighting began.
All the tents were flooded with sewage water. This is not life. I implore all Arab countries in the entire world to see what's happening to us. Have mercy on us. Look at us. We're living among sewage water. Our children are dying. I swear they're dying. We work to alleviate people's suffering from sewage, but we lack the capabilities, materials or maintenance equipment necessary for our work.
Well, now we turn our attention to how markets are likely to move on Monday after the exit polls showed a resounding victory for the ruling party.
Indian stocks, bonds and the rupee are likely to rise. Most pollsters expect the Bharatiya Janata Party-led alliance to win 350 to 400 seats in the 543-seat lower house of the parliament. That is far more than the 272 needed for a majority. The alliance won 352 in 2019. Votes will be counted on Tuesday.
The exit polls should comfort investors fretting about recent stock market fluctuations. Investors were worried that the BJP may fall short of Modi's 400-seat objective due to poor voter turnouts and tight elections in various states. A landslide triumph will allow the party to implement measures needed to help India's fast-growing economy.
Vineet Samre, who oversees about $12 billion as head of equities at DSP Mutual Fund in Mumbai, said there was some skepticism with volatility picking up as some people were getting jittery on the election outcome. Now it will settle. This is a resounding vote for continuity.
While the final results might differ from the exit polls, the strength of the predicted victory is expected to benefit risk assets. Indian stocks reached a record last week, while the bond markets are near their highest levels in about a year.
Should the results on the 4th of June align with the exit polls, analysts expect the NSE Nifty 50 index to reach a new record. The index fell nearly 2% or at 22,531 last week as foreign investors traded cautiously ahead of the election outcome.
Gary Dugan, Chief Investment Officer at Dalma Capital Management in Dubai, said that the suggested size of the majority would allow the government to continue unabated with its current policy program. Dugan expects markets to gain 3 to 5% on Monday. Sandeep Bagla, CEO of Trust Mutual Fund, joined with his inputs as well. He joined us with his inputs as well yesterday, and listen to what he had to say.
So I think markets do not seem to have factored in any possibility of political discontinuity, and which is why I think there has been no correction and markets are hitting all-time highs. And this could well continue till June 4th, when the rubber hits the road and we get to know about the numbers. And there is nothing much to look forward to by the market participants beyond that.
All right, let's now take a look at all of the developments now from the world of technology, starting with Australia. Australia's government has announced a new legislation which will make it a criminal offence to share deepfake pornographic images of adults without their consent. The law will be introduced to Parliament in the coming week. Australia's new legislation against deepfake porn will bring in jail sentences of up to 6 years for sharing non-consensual deepfake pornography. According to reports, the penalty will be increased to 7 years if the offender has also created the material. The new law aims to only protect adults as children are already protected under separate child abuse allegations.
Meta has reported that Facebook is attracting its highest number of young adult users in 3 years. More than 40 million US and Canadian adults aged 18 to 29 now check Facebook daily. Meta has been trying to shake the platform's reputation as a go-to social media app for older generations. The company's efforts in recent years have focused on recapturing the attention of young adults who have been flocking to TikTok. Well, Meta has seen 5 quarters of healthy app usage growth among young adults. Young users are utilizing Facebook to use sections like marketplace, groups, and dating. Facebook, which was founded in 2004, has 3.2 billion users globally. It initially had 50 million users within its first 3 years. However, it became less attractive to young users who drive consumer fads and are crucial to ads. A 2023 survey shows that only about a third of US teens say they use Facebook.
Experts from China's robot industry say that humanoid robots have the potential to transform homes and workplaces. In the near future, industry insiders predict these robots could be ready to enter factories and households within the next 3 to 5 years. As per experts, this development is driven by advancements in AI foundation models, which is paving the way for industrial application of humanoid robots. Humanoid robots are robots designed to look and move like humans with head, torso, arms and legs. They use sensors and AI to perform tasks in human environments such as factories, homes and for personal assistance.
Many now anticipate that these robots could soon be broadly applied in the manufacturing sector. Experts also believe that humanoid robots could play important roles in daily life, such as performing household chores and providing companionship. Industry estimates suggest that the global humanoid robot market could reach over $280 billion by 2030, with China's market expected to account for around 20% of that figure. Let's have a look at what's making news in the world of sports. Well, Japan's Yuka Sasu, she recovered from a 3-shot deficit to win the women's US Open title. The 22-year-old became the youngest player to win the trophy twice. There had been a 3-way tie heading into the final round. Sasu produced a run of